Is now called to order at 10 a.m. We will now begin the meeting with a roll call of all members. Staff, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will do roll call alphabetical by member agency, starting with Ted Wolf, Apache Junction. Paul Patney, ADOT. Raj Thowdam from Avondale. Bob Litton in for Scott Lowe, Buckeye. Hal Marin with Cave Creek.
Present.
Thank you. Jason Crampton, City of Chandler. Jorge Gastelum, City of El Mirage. Romare Truly with FHWA.
Present.
Thank you. Christopher Salas, Town of Florence.
Present.
Thank you. David Janover, Town of Fountain Hills.
I'm here.
Thank you. Jason Hafner, Town of Gilbert. Shahid Abbas, City of Glendale.
Present.
Thank you. Christopher Bridges, City of Goodyear.
Here.
Thank you. Bob Thaxton, Town of Guadalupe.
Here.
Thank you. Keith Jernaski, City of Litchfield Park. Keith Brown, City of Maricopa.
Here.
Thank you. Steve Wilcox with McDOT.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, you are here. Shar Johnson, Town of Paradise Valley.
Here.
Thank you. Adina Lund, City of Peoria.
Here.
Thank you. Keeney Knudsen with City of Phoenix.
Here.
Thank you. Christopher Wanamaker, Pinell County Public Works.
Here.
Thank you. Mohammed Youssef, Town of Queen Creek.
Here.
Thank you. Mark Melanchenko, City of Scottsdale.
Here.
Thank you. Eric Boyles with City of Surprise.
Here.
Thank you. Shelley Seiler, City of Tempe.
Here.
Thank you. Randy Babchuk, Town of Tolleson. Henry Ikwit-Ukwa with Valley Metro RPTA. Herschel Workman, Town of Wickenburg. And then Grant Anderson with Youngtown. Grant told me he could not be here. Is there anyone I missed in the roll call?
This is Raj Thowdam from City of Avondale. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm late. I was late. Okay.
That's okay. Got you, Raj. Anyone else? Yeah, let me just confirm. All right, 20 members here, so we do have a quorum, which is 14.
I'm sorry, so we do have a quorum, Steph?
We do, yes.
Great, thank you. Moving on to item number 2, call to the audience. MAG provides the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. Members of the public are invited to submit written comments via the MAG website. Any comments received 2 hours prior to the meeting have been shared with committee members in advance of the meeting and will be included in the meeting minutes. Staff, have we received any online written comments for the call to the audience?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So we did recently change our procedure for accepting written public comments. That change went into effect on June 9th. So any comments received before then will be read aloud. Comments received since then were emailed out to you. So I will now hand this over to Tim Stroh to read the comments.
Great, Mr. Stroh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Transportation Review Committee. We have 5 comments to read this morning. First comment is from Kimberly Crowther Miller from the City of Mesa. Good morning, Transportation Review Committee. I appreciate the work that goes into preparing the reports for the various transportation initiatives, and I know there are many needed transportation projects to consider. The information summary report is very helpful in providing high-level overview and recommendations for each initiative. I noticed that in all but one summary, no cons were offered. I find it unlikely that there are no downside to an initiative. In addition, it was hard to discern how many people are potentially impacted for better or worse, should the initiatives move forward or be discontinued. These were a few of my observations for your consideration in helping to better inform the public. Thank you. End comment. Next comment is from Michael Mendoza. I'm writing to urge you to reject any projects that rip out lanes and increase congestion and to fund any cities and not to fund any cities that do. Proposing to bring in transportation policies to Maricopa County that are freedom limiting and costly that goes against Arizona Constitution and my individual rights. You ultimately want us to give up our cars and what we do in the private and are trying to California or Arizona. I'm against this. Thank you, Michael Mendoza. End comment. Next comment is from Kevin Gallagher from Gilbert, Arizona. I have increasingly been hearing the phrase road diets. The word diet, if forced in general, tends to turn me off. After doing some research on this specific topic, I am wholeheartedly opposed. Reducing the amount of lanes will not reduce accidents and cars on the road. In fact, it will do just the opposite. Fewer lanes will mean more time spent on the road and more congestion, therefore creating a higher risk of car accidents and more pollution. In Chandler, this road diet has been proposed to encourage us to ride the bus. I can appreciate the sentiment of more bus or more bike riding. However, the expectation for Arizonans to stop driving is frankly unrealistic. Most people do not want to ride the bus. We want to drive our cars and maximize our time by driving instead of being limited to a specific bus route or schedule. Ripping out lanes for cars to accommodate for a bus lane will also severely affect the businesses in the area. The construction will last at least 2 years, diminishing incentives for customers to shop, eat, and visit in that area. In the long term, the businesses will be harder to access and will most likely result in closing of many small businesses. Overall, I believe road diets to be the attempt to solve a problem that is non-existent. End comment. Next comment is from Mary Kay Ruitt from Wickenburg, Arizona. No road diets for Maricopa and the rest of Arizona. The transit system proposed would not help the majority of people traveling and does not fit our state, considering how rural parts of the county are. We don't need to cause more traffic jams and add transit to nowhere. End comment. The last comment, Mr. Chair, is from Charles Burrier from Mesa, Arizona. I want to express my opinion on all this Green New Deal thing you want to impose on the residents of Maricopa. I am totally against the idea that this will improve life for the people. This sounds like something right out of the Soviet handbook. This will not effectively work in Arizona. End comment. That's the last of the comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Stroh. Moving on to item number 3, our next item is the MAG Transportation Policy and Planning Director's report. Tim Stroh will provide the report. Tim, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Zeter, members of the Transportation Review Committee. I hope everybody's enjoying their nice, warm, hot summer, or at least able to get out of town for a few days. I'd like to first start off my update with congratulating Chris Bridges on becoming the new vice chair for the committee. He will ascend to the chair position later this fall when we make that change. I would also like to welcome to the committee Eric Boyles, Transportation Director representing the city of Surprise. Welcome, Eric. Congratulations. I would also like to welcome Ramar Truly, Community Planner representing Federal Highway Administration. So welcome to the committee, guys. One of my first items, many of you are aware that the last day of the legislative session, the legislators passed Senate Bill 1102, which will allow Maricopa County voters to decide whether to extend the half-cent sales tax for transportation. Governor Hobbs signed the bill in early August. It will go to the fall 2024 ballot. I just want to take a moment to thank all of our member agencies for their support during the last few years. I know it's extremely busy, very stressful. I also want to thank some of our team members here at MAG who did an outstanding job. I want to thank John Bolin and Audra Kester Thomas and their teams. They put in a lot of late nights coordinating this effort. And so I just want to thank them and thank our member agencies. The next item I have is regarding the 2023 MAG Regional Crossing Guard Training workshops that were held in July and the first 2 weeks of August. After 2 years of virtual training and 1 year where we had one consolidated workshop, this year we're able to host 3 workshops in Scottsdale, Phoenix, and Peoria. This is a really important regional initiative that requires months of partnership with our member agencies to get them to volunteer and to reserve space. Nearly 200 crossing guards participated this year and received the basic information to keep themselves and the students safe. I want to thank the staff from Peoria, Glendale, Surprise, Scottsdale, Tempe, and Phoenix who helped plan these workshops, secure facilities, and provided their staff as trainers. We continue to look forward to this participation as we start to plan for the next year. And like I said, I just want to take a second to thank our members. Appreciate it. Next item is a street sweepers call for projects update. If you recall, Patrick and his team sent out a reminder opening up the call for projects on Tuesday, August 1st. MAG staff held an application workshop on August 17th, and now the applications are due at 10 a.m. on Friday, September 15th. No late exceptions or applications will be accepted. If you have any questions regarding this item, please feel free to reach out to Patrick Stone after this meeting. Also received a message from Patrick and his team. They're out conducting their annual agency meetings, getting up to speed with each member agency's federal projects, discussing how the MAG programming process works and answering any other questions. I want to thank all the members for help coordinating these meetings and setting aside the time to meet with our staff. We truly appreciate it, and it will pay dividends in the future with sharing this information. My last item is regarding RARF and HERF revenue collections. RARF July collections were 2.5% higher than July the previous year, which is good. HERF collections rebounded nicely from the spring, where they dipped a little bit lower, but were approximately this last month 3.9% higher when compared to July the previous year. Mr. Chair, that completes my report.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of Mr. Stroh? Okay, moving on to item number 4, approval of the consent agenda. Our next agenda item is the approval of the consent agenda items 4A through 4C. Does any member of the committee have any questions or request a presentation on any of these items? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve consent items 4A through 4C?
Motion. City of Litchfield Park.
Thank you, Keith. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Kristen Goodyear.
Thanks, Chris. We have a motion and a second. We'll now have those participating in the meeting online to take part in a voice vote by turning on their cameras and unmuting their audio. We need to see the faces of everyone to participate in the voice vote. This is to speed up the voting process. For those who cannot or do not want to turn on their cameras, staff will conduct a roll call vote. Staff will only call on those virtual participants who did not turn on their camera. Members, please leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote, so that staff can count the people's names whose cameras are not on. Can I have a voice vote of those online? Those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thanks all. And just I'll go through a couple of names if you would please keep your cameras on. Bob Thaxton.
Aye.
Thank you. Chris Solis.
Aye.
Thanks. Oh, you were on. Sorry about that. Jason Crampton.
Aye.
Thank you. And Mohammed Yusuf.
Aye.
Thank you. Shar Johnson.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. I think that is everyone. Is there anyone with their camera not on that I didn't call? Romero, I know I didn't call you, but you're non-voting. So I think that is everyone. Thanks, Mr. Chair. The motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 5. Seconds. Item number 5 is a request by the town of Paradise Valley for Mockingbird Lane improvements, Lincoln Drive to McDonald Drive. This item will be presented by MAG Transportation Improvement Program Supervisor Patrick Stone. This item is on the agenda for recommendation of the approval. Mr. Stone.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members of the Transportation Review Committee. It's my pleasure to present this item. This is a project scope modification request from the town of Paradise Valley. Our federal fund programming guidelines require that significant scope changes get taken through the committee process, starting with the Committee of Origin, in this case, the Active Transportation Committee, moving through the Transportation Review Committee, and then on up through the policy committees. With that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Jeremy Knapp with the town of Paradise Valley to give the presentation. Jeremy?
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members of the Transportation Review Committee. Thank you for your time today to consider this request to modify the project scope for the town's Mockingbird Lane, Lincoln Drive to McDonald Drive project. Next slide. The project limits, which have not changed with the revised scope, includes this half-mile stretch of the north-south alignment of Mockingbird Lane between Lincoln Drive and McDonald Drive. Currently, the roadway has one travel lane in each direction, striped shoulders, but not full-width bike lanes, and a sidewalk on the west side of the roadway. All the properties adjacent to the project in this corridor are single-family residential. Nearby are places of worship, a resort, and a public elementary school. Mockingbird Lane is a minor arterial which essentially begins at McDonald Drive but continues north for approximately 2 miles. This corridor has a high number of recreation cyclists, and the stretch of Mockingbird Lane just north of Lincoln Drive was reconstructed in 2021 and includes bike lanes. Next slide. The original project scope, as you see here on screen, was to install a sidewalk on the east side of Mockingbird Lane, ADA improvements to the west side of Mockingbird Lane, including curb ramps and driveways, replace a ribbon curb with curb and gutter, replace existing sidewalk and pavement that has ponding issues, widen the roadway to provide for standard width bike lanes. The original project amount, when approved in 2019, was $1.34 million. Next slide. The town prides itself on having a robust public discourse for all aspects of its local governance, especially for our CIP projects that affect our residents. So the town conducted extensive public outreach during this project development. We held 3 project-specific public meetings throughout the course of the project, where residents requested removing the sidewalk on the east side of the roadway and instead focus on roadway improvements. In January of 2023, the Planning Commission reviewed the project scope and listened to feedback from residents, noting the project was focused on traffic and drainage elements as listed in the town CIP. And then in February of 2023, the town council noted that there were 8 total public meetings held on the project, and the consensus was not to construct a sidewalk on the east side. So this request is a response to public feedback and Planning Commission and town council determinations. Next slide. This is just a plan view of the proposed mini roundabout that's being added to the project at the intersection of Mockingbird Lane and Valley Vista to help with traffic calming in the area. Next slide. The modified project scope, the focus is on improving existing pedestrian facilities in the corridor, to introduce traffic calming measures in the corridor, to realign the project schedule for fiscal year 2024 obligation as originally awarded. The town had requested and received closeout funding in fiscal year 23, but was unable to obligate. And the revised project amount is $3.2 million, 1.27 in federal funding and 1.93 in local. And the town is intending to seek closeout funding in fiscal year 2024. Next slide. Here's the project schedule here on screen. We received environmental clearance in June of this year. We're anticipating 100% plan submittal in October of this year. TCE acquisitions will be complete by the end of the calendar year. Utility relocations by January of 24, project authorization by February 24, and construction June 24 to October 24. Next slide. With that, the town respectfully requests approval by the MAG Transportation Review Committee to recommend approval of the summarized scope modifications. And I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for the presentation. Do any members have any questions or comments on the requested action? Hearing none, is there a motion for recommendation of approval for agenda item number 5?
This is Dave Janover with Fountain Hills. I would make the motion to approve the requested scope change.
Thank you, David. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Keith Brown with City of Maricopa. I'll second.
Thank you, Keith. We have a motion and a second. We will now have those participating in the meeting online take part in the voice vote by turning on their cameras and unmuting their audio. For those who cannot or do not want to turn on their cameras, staff will conduct a roll call vote. Members, please leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote. Can I have a voice vote of those in the room and those online? Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Steph, did we get all the votes required?
Sorry about that. I was talking, I was muted. So just a few names to call. Bob Paxton.
Aye.
Thank you. Jason Crampton.
Abstain.
Thank you. And then Shar Johnson.
Aye.
All right, thank you. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Motion passes. Moving on to item number 6. This is a second project deferral request from the city of Tempe for Scottsdale Road Bike Lane continuation, Curry to Continental. Item number 6 will be presented by MAG Transportation Improvement Program Supervisor Patrick Stone. This item is on the agenda for recommendation of approval. Mr. Stone.
Again, good morning, Chair, members of TRC. Second item I have this morning. This is a second project deferral request for the city of Tempe. Just before I turn this over to the city, of note, deferral requests beyond the first deferral do require the completion of the appeals process. That involves taking the deferral request through the MAG committee process, again, starting at the technical committee, in this case, the active transportation committee. On the agency's behalf, they need to identify what has necessitated the deferral, show the city's continued commitment to the project, both with staff and financial, a revised project schedule showing the project can be delivered, and how they have mitigated the items that necessitated the deferral. And with that, I will turn the presentation over to Chase Wallman with the city of Tempe. Chase?
Great. Yeah, thank you, Patrick. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the MAG Transportation Review Committee. As Patrick said, my name is Chase Wallman, Principal Planner with the City of Tempe, and thanks for the opportunity today to present Tempe's second deferral request of the Scottsdale Road Bike Lane Continuation Curry to Continental project. Next slide, please. Just to get everyone oriented where this project is within the region, this project is located in North Tempe along Scottsdale Road. It stretches from Curry Road to the south to our border with the city of Scottsdale at Continental Drive or Roosevelt Street to the north. This map is identifying the surrounding bike facilities around the project area. So in red are bike lanes that this project connects to, and the blue are the off-street multi-use paths. So this project's along Scottsdale Road, which is a 7-lane arterial road. It features 8-foot sidewalks on both sides, 3 southbound travel lanes, 3 northbound travel lanes, as well as a 2-way left turn lane, which is broken up periodically with landscape medians. Next slide, please. So this project, as I said, is along Scottsdale Road and encompasses 1.25 miles of improvements for bicyclists and pedestrians. So we'll be proposing dedicated bike facilities in the form of protected bike lanes. In addition, we'll be looking to do accessibility improvements for pedestrians, which include ADA directional ramps, as well as driveway wraparounds. This 1.25 miles will also receive a pavement preservation treatment for the entire corridor, as well as we'll be supplementing the street lighting in the corridor, as well as adding additional landscaping. Next slide, please. So this project is not only significant for the city of Tempe, but is significant for the region as a whole. We're excited to be piloting protected bike lanes in Tempe as part of this project. So we had very short segments of protected bike lanes before, but this is our first project to really have continuous bike lanes that are protected in the city, especially on an arterial. So we're excited to include that with this project and see how that operates. In addition, this project will extend existing bike lanes that are already in the city of Scottsdale South. So with this project, you'll be able to be on bike lanes from Curry Road in Tempe all the way to Thomas Road in the city of Scottsdale. Additionally, to the south, the project connects to existing bike lanes that are at Curry Road. These bike lanes continue on to 2 major regional off-street pathways that are west and east of our project corridor. You have the Indian Bend Wash Path, which continues north into Scottsdale and south to our Rio Salado Path system. That has continuation into the city of Mesa and Phoenix as well. And then you have the Crosscut Canal Path to the west of our project area, and that project continues north into the city of Scottsdale. This project's identified in City of Tempe long-range plans, which includes the Tempe Transportation Master Plan. But additionally, this project's also identified in regional long-range plans, such as being identified as a Tier 1 corridor in MAG's active transportation plan. Next slide, please. So this project was originally programmed for construction in fiscal year 21. We kicked off the project in 2020 and requested our first deferral from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 23. This was approved at MAG Regional Council in April of 2021. We held our first round of public outreach in November of 2021. At that time, we were proposing standard bike lanes, which would require extensive modifications to existing landscape medians. along the corridor. We received outreach. The public feedback was overwhelmingly supportive of adding more than just a standard bike lane to the corridor and reducing the impacts to the existing landscape medians. So there was a desire to have added protection to these bike lanes in between the vehicular lanes and the bike lanes in a buffer space. So we reiterated the design of that to include protected bike lanes, as well as to reduce the impacts to the existing landscape medians along the corridor. So we completed a 30% design of that in January 2022. With that reiterated design, it identified additional properties, additional right-of-way that would need to be acquired, as well as additional TCEs. So we began that process of gathering title reports, conducting appraisals, as well as starting a negotiation with property owners to acquire the additional right-of-way and TCEs necessary to accommodate those protected bike lanes, as well as the ADA accessibility improvements. We completed the 60% design in August of 2022, and to date, we have finished the 100% design. We have gained the environmental clearance. We anticipate a utility clearance in September, but that brings us to the additional right-of-way tasks where we need additional time, which, next slide, please, is the subject of today's deferral request. So we are requesting to move the project's construction from FY23 to FY24. This will allow the city the additional time to complete all the required right-of-way tasks for the project. Once we have that right-of-way clearance, which is our last step in the project, we will be able to get the funds obligated so we can bid the project for construction. Next slide, please. The city does remain committed to the project. The city continues to reappropriate all the required local match and contingency funding for the project through the city's 5-year capital improvement program. Additionally, with the additional right-of-way and TCEs that are required as part of the project, the city identified the additional funding necessary in the city CIP for the remaining right-of-way acquisition. And as always, project management staff will be assigned through the completion of the project. Next slide, please. So our new proposed schedule, as I said, we're pretty much wrapped up with the project. We have finished the final plan specifications and estimate for the project. The environmental clearance has been completed. We anticipate issuing the utility clearance next month and anticipate the right-of-way clearance being completed in February of 2024. With that, we would anticipate advertising the project for construction in June of 2024 and issuing the notice to proceed in September of 2024. Next slide, please. So again, we are requesting your consideration to move this project's construction funding from fiscal year 23 to fiscal year 24. And I thank you again for the opportunity to present Tempe's second deferral request, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chase. Are there any questions regarding the request?
Yeah, RJ, this is East City Litchfield Park. Chase, question about utilities. You said clearance in September. Do you have any relocations that are occurring?
Yes, those are ongoing. That's really the last utility that we're waiting on. So with their most recent schedule, we anticipate issuing in September.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Hi, this is Jason. Hey, Chase, sorry if I missed this during your presentation, but what is causing the need for the additional right-of-way? Is that when you converted to the protected bike lane approach and you need to expand the width of the roadway to accommodate that?
Mr. Chair, Member Crampton, yes, that's correct. The additional protection in the bike lane moved the between that as well as some of our driveway wraparounds that were identified. Those were the need of the additional right-of-way along the corridor. So it was mostly to accommodate the driveway wraparounds that we were identifying.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any further questions? Hearing none, is there a motion for recommendation of approval for agenda item number 6?
So moved. This is Jason with City of Chandler.
Jason, thank you. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second, City of Phoenix, Knutson.
Thank you, Keeney. We have a motion and a second. We will now have those participating in the meeting online take part in the voice vote by turning on their cameras and unmuting their audio. For those who cannot or do not want to turn on their cameras, staff will conduct a roll call vote. Members, please leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote. Can I have a voice vote of those in the room and those online? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Steph, is there any additional votes you need to call the roll on?
Just a few, Mr. Chair. Dina Lund.
Aye.
Thank you. Shar Johnson.
Aye.
Thank you. Bob Thaxton.
Aye.
Thank you. And that looks like everyone. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Then that motion passes. Moving on to item number 7. This is a third deferral request. City of Phoenix for a project on Van Buren, 7th Street to 24th Street. This item will be presented by MAG Transportation Improvement Program Supervisor Patrick Stone. This item is on the agenda for recommendation of approval. Mr. Stone.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Transportation Review Committee. This is the last item I have for today. This is a third deferral request from the City of Phoenix for their Van Buren project. Similar to the notes I provided for the Tempe project before, city has to demonstrate those items outside their control that have necessitated the additional deferral. Their commitment to the project, a revised scope showing how the project can be delivered, and that they have mitigated those items causing the deferral. Of note, this will be the second time a third deferral request has been heard through the MAG committee process. And with that, I will turn it over to Leticia Vargas with the City of Phoenix. Leticia?
Thank you, Patrick. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Transportation Review Committee. My name is Leticia Vargas, and I'm a Special Projects Administrator with the City of Phoenix Street Transportation Department. I want to thank you so much for allowing me to present this morning on a very important pedestrian safety and streetscape project along Van Buren from 7th Street to 24th Street. Next slide, please. So Van Buren, as we know it today, was constructed in and around 1936. Our project area goes from 7th Street to 24th Street. Well, we've had a lot of localized improvements over the years, mostly utility work and some pavement work. The corridor itself has remained intact with the exception of key historical structures, mostly defined by iconic motel signs and buildings. Today, there still remains a lot of the remnant motel courts and automotive corridors of the 1940s. Currently, our roadway consists of 2 lanes in each direction. We have 12-foot outer lanes and 11-foot inner lanes, as well as 10-foot wide continuous 2-way left turn lanes. There's also existing sidewalk along the project corridor, anywhere from 4 to 5 feet on both sides of the street. And we also have areas of sporadically wider sidewalk. The existing Van Buren Street right-of-way within our project limits is generally 80 feet wide. If you compare that to a modern day arterial, a 5-lane arterial, that would be more like 100 feet wide. So what that tells us is that we have a very tight right-of-way along this corridor. In fact, several of the buildings along the corridor directly abut onto the right-of-way. As you can see through this visual, Van Buren Street has direct connection to major arterials like 7th Street, 16th Street, and 21st Street. Van Buren also has a very popular bus route, line 3, that carries nearly 1,200 average daily weekday boarding. So that's a lot of people walking to and from transit. Next slide, please. To understand where you're going, you really need to evaluate where you've been. And that's why this project context slide is so important to share, specifically to the project history. Understanding the story behind it and the community demographics is also important to point out. So for those of you that didn't know this, Van Buren was part of the original State Route 60 highway system. In fact, it served as a cross-country funnel and collected traffic from the Mexican border to State Route 60. And it routed traffic 24/7 down the highway in the 1940s, that is before the interstate was built. Another noteworthy point to make is that redlining in the 1930s was also a common practice. Van Buren Street served as a dividing line. This map to the right shows the social divide that Van Buren created in the 30s, literally preventing residents, mainly minorities, Blacks, and Hispanics, from accessing homes north of Van Buren. In fact, the first African-American to purchase home north of Van Buren was Lincoln Ragsdale in 1953. Just south of our project corridor is one of the city's first city parks, East Lake Park and East Lake neighborhood, located near Jefferson and 16th Street. And this would be a central hub for our African-American community as well as the civil rights movement. In fact, our former esteemed councilman, Calvin C. Good, who served for 22 years on our city council, lived in the East Lake neighborhood from 1955 up until 2020 when he passed. Today, the demographics of our project corridor continues to house predominantly disadvantaged communities with 48.6% Hispanic, 10.6% African-American, 1.2% Native, 3.7% Asian, with 32.6% white. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Today, we have ongoing investments in the Edison East Lake Choice neighborhood. You can see from this map, we have several affordable low-income housing communities that surround our project corridor. In fact, in 2018, the city received a large 30 million Choice Hope Grant 6 award that allowed us to add up to 800 more new public housing units to the surrounding area. In 2023, the city continues to deliver and commit on this process, on this promise to invest low-income housing in the surrounding project area. Next slide, please. Based on input that we've had over a series of community efforts, today our project consists of this: a 2-mile project corridor with pedestrian and streetscape improvements. We're going to be adding ADA compliant sidewalks throughout the corridor. We're adding 2 new hot crossings at 15th Street and 23rd Street, and they are existing 2 stage crosswalks today. Pedestrian lighting throughout, pedestrian refuge median islands where appropriate, landscaping and shade where it fits, and we're also redesigning traffic signals. Next slide, please. So then let's quickly try to look at our project schedule and see how we've evolved to this point. So in 2015, the Reinvent Phoenix initiative was underway. One of the outcomes of that was the East Lake Garfield Transit-Oriented Development Plan, which proposed Van Buren Street as a complete street, a bicycle and pedestrian corridor. So the city initiated a pre-design effort in 2015, and as a result, we had 2 public processes. That helped us decide that it was an important project to our community, so we applied for transportation alternative grants for the Van Buren Bicycle and Pedestrian Improvement Project. And that project was awarded $2.3 million. In 2017, we kicked off that project. We quickly received our NEPA clearance in 2019. And it was then that we started also hearing that there was some concern in the public regarding the loss of a lane to add bicycle lanes. So that was one of the reasons that prompted us to request our first deferral, which was approved by Regional Council in October of that year. With that, the city initiated a community outreach process that essentially identified different community priorities, and that was in March and August of 2020. What that allowed us to do is to realize that we had to pause the project for progress of the project to reconsider the approach based on the entire community feedback. In 2021, an alternate project was created where we made a commitment to do 2 distinct projects. One, the Van Buren project, as we know it today on 7th Street to 24th Street, and a parallel bike project on Via Fillmore, which is a 1/4 mile north of our Van Buren project. Again, we decided to kick off additional public outreach, and that was kicked off in April. This meeting we called an opportunity to listen. Next slide, please. In 2022, based on the input we were receiving, we requested a second MAG deferral, and we received that in February of 2022. Our project was then at 30% design. We had a second community outreach process in April of 2022 to talk about what we had heard at our listening opportunity. Right-of-way was identified in 2022, and a utility clearance was also initiated in that year. In 2023, our project is now at 60%. We've updated and revised our right-of-way needs. We've received updated NEPA clearance. Our right-of-way acquisition has also been initiated. Title reports have been ordered and received. Contact has been made with at least 90% of our property owners, and we've also initiated appraisals over the next few months. Next slide. So that leads us to what was out of our city control. So public concerns and public input process really impacted our project schedule. Keep in mind, to date, we've had over 8 public meetings on this project alone, which is not typical. Through the public processes, the city remained committed to work with the elected officials and the community groups to listen and engage, to be sensitive to the community at large. And it was in 2021, through the listening opportunity, that the city heard loud and clear that safety was the key priority for this community. In fact, the residents expressed inadequate street crossings were a major concern. As a result, and in response to that, the city added 5 updated signals and 2 new hot crossings. What that did is it impacted our project schedule. We had to go back to design to add those added scopes, and that added to our impacted parcels list as well. Next slide, please. So then, this ran into another item that was outside of our project control, and that is our right-of-way constraints. If you recall, Van Buren Street is only 80 feet, has only 80 feet width of right-of-way. A typical arterial of its type would have 100 feet. So we've had to be very careful in terms of what we can do within the right-of-way constraints. And that really allowed us to be very conscious. In fact, one of the items that we realized in the process was at a 30% design, we were at 9,100 square feet of TCE. With the addition of scope, we nearly doubled our TCE, which we are now at over 17,500 square feet of TCE. So this was absolutely a constraint for our project that we needed to work around. Next slide, please. So with that, where are we at with our current deferral request? The city of Phoenix requested a first deferral again to allow for community input and processes, and that was approved in October of 2019. The city of Phoenix then requested a second deferral and scope changes based on, again, community input and feedback to focus on pedestrian safety, and that was approved by Regional Council in February 2022. Today, the city requests a third deferral to realign the project schedule for early fiscal year 25 obligation to address the federal clearances for utilities and specifically for right-of-way based on impacts from the revised scope. Next slide, please. The city remains committed to fulfill and deliver a pedestrian and safety enhancement project along Van Buren Street from 7th Street to 24th Street. We are committed to fund the Van Buren project through local participation identified and committed to the city's capital improvement program. We have adequate staff allocated and resources to complete this project. And we also stand committed to evaluate a parallel bike boulevard project, the Via Fillmore project, to add a bike route option. And although that is separate, we still stay committed to that project. Next slide, please. So here's our project schedule. Like I said, we're at 60% design. We are reviewing final comment resolution, and we hope to complete that by September of 23. Our utility clearance is set for November of 2023, 100% design in December of this year. Right-of-way clearance is anticipated in September of 2024. Our environmental clearance, it has been updated, however, with the requirement of a PISA update, which is a technical environmental study required for obligation. We hope to have that done by January of 2025. We'll be ready to obligate the project in February of 25 and be ready to go to construction in spring, summer of 2025. Of note, our current project estimate is $6.6 million. Next slide, please. And with that, we are respectfully requesting the approval from the MAG Transportation Review Committee for a third deferral request for the Van Buren project from 7th Street to 24th Street. And I'm here to answer any questions the committee might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vargas. Are there any questions regarding the presentation or the request from the city of Phoenix?
Mr. Chair, this is Jason Hafner from the town of Gilbert.
Go ahead.
I have a question for Patrick. Patrick, what's the MAG process if a project needs a fourth deferral?
Mr. Hafner, Chair Zeter, members of the Transportation Review Committee. Currently, the guidelines denote an additional appeals process. It doesn't specify where. I would not anticipate ever seeing a fourth deferral come through the committee process, and we will be, MAG's intent is to update our federal fund programming guidelines to provide more clarity to the deferral process and what would be allowed and not allowed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Hearing none, is there a motion for recommendation of approval for agenda item number 7?
Mr. Chair, so moved.
Thank you, Jason. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Shahid Glendale.
Thank you for the second. We have a motion and a second. We'll now have those participating in the meeting online take part in the voice vote by turning on their cameras and unmuting their audio. For those who cannot or do not want to turn on their cameras, staff will conduct a roll call vote. Members, please leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote is taken. Can I have a voice vote of those in the room and those online? Those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say nay. Steph.
Thank you. Just a few to call. Shar Johnson.
Aye.
Thank you. Bob Thaxton.
Aye.
Thank you. And Mohammed Youssef.
Aye.
Thank you. That does it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously. Moving on to agenda item number 8. This is fiscal year ranking for 2024 MAG Design Assistance Prioritized Project Ranking. This item will be presented by MAG Transportation Project Manager Kay Bork. This item is on the agenda for recommendation for approval. Ms. Bork.
Thank you, Chair and members of the TRC. Today, I'm pleased to present the recommended prioritized project ranking for the fiscal year 2024 Design Assistance Call for Projects. Before I present the recommended priority list, I'd like to just briefly summarize the Design Assistance Program. Next slide, please. In fiscal year 2024, we have $500,000 in federal funds available for projects. And the purpose of the program is to invite member agencies to submit project proposals for preliminary engineering and design for active transportation projects. Once projects are submitted and the submittal time period has closed, our active transportation committee members evaluate and score projects. And they do that using our MAG online portal. The project scores are automatically aggregated and ranked, and the project ranking is reviewed and approved through the MAG committee process, and that's with final funding approval brought to MAG Regional Council. Next slide, please. This table shows the priority ranking, and of the 8 projects that were submitted, the top 4 projects can be fully funded, while the 5th project, that's the Scottsdale 2nd Street Neighborhood Bikeway project, that can be partially funded. Scottsdale has confirmed that they will accept the design assistance funding and will make up the difference with a cash match and potentially apply for closeout fundings if that fund is available. At their August 15th meeting, the Active Transportation Committee recommended approval of the prioritized project ranking. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding the presentation and the recommendation? Hearing none, is there a motion for recommendation of approval for agenda item number 8?
Mohammed Youssef, motion to approve.
Thank you, Mohammed. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Town Cave Creek, second.
Great. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. We will now have those participating in the meeting online take part in the voice vote by turning on their cameras and unmuting their audio. For those who cannot or do not want to turn on their cameras, staff will conduct a roll call vote. Members, please leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote. Can I have a voice vote of those in the room and those online? Those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Steph,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few names to call. Shar Johnson.
Aye.
Thank you. And Bob Thaxton.
Aye.
Thank you. That'll do it, Mr. Chair.
thank you very much. That item passes. Moving on to item number 9, member agency updates. Do any members have updates for the committee? Hearing none, moving on to item number 10, request for future agenda items. Are there any requests by committee members for an item on a future agenda? Hearing none, the next meeting of the Transportation Review Committee will be on Thursday, September 28th at 10 a.m. with no further business. Today's meeting is adjourned at 10:50 a.m. Thank you all and have a nice weekend, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
You